I knew they were going to screw me the second I walked into that welcome meeting and saw the new VP standing by the whiteboard like a prison guard with a spreadsheet fetish. The guy had the energy of a Bluetooth headset come to life, buzzcut, cheap cologne, and that dead-eyed glint you only get after waterboarding a budget report. He didn't shake my hand. He didn't ask about handoff plans. He just tapped the board twice and said, "We're eliminating process bottlenecks. That includes legacy workflows and personnel dependencies. In case it wasn't clear, I was the personnel dependency. I'd spent 6 years quietly running ops at that company. I didn't need applause. I didn't need a plaque. I just needed people not to detonate the infrastructure with their arrogance. But this guy, this freshly imported transformation VP with a buzzword addiction, looked at me like I was a broken USB stick from the Reagan administration. "Erase your drafts," he said with this little smirk like he thought I'd cry. "We don't need your process. We need scalability." So I nodded, walked back to my desk, took one long sip of my lukewarm coffee, hazelnut creamer, just the way I like it when I'm about to burn bridges, and pulled up the file he was so concerned about. It was called Process Doc Draft V3 Final Realithisone SH. I highlighted it, pressed delete, made sure he was watching. "Done," I said and smiled. He smiled back like he'd just won something. Now, if you're wondering why he cared so much about that one file, or why the CTO stopped answering messages 3 days later, don't worry, we'll get there. But real quick, before the train fully derails, if you're one of the 97% of folks listening who haven't hit that subscribe button or liked the story yet, come on. Give that button a little love. It seriously fuels the team through the chaos and makes sure we keep digging up these delicious disasters for you. Anyway, after that little delete the drafts charade, I was invited to a knowledge transfer session. You ever do one of those? It's like being asked to explain how you breathe so someone can replicate it with a straw and a paper bag. They brought in this kid, fresh out of college, full of Google certs and no idea how any of our systems actually ran. And I'm not blaming him. I really ain't. He was sweet, in that dear in a data center kind of way. But he kept saying things like, "I think I can re-implement this in Python," as if recoding payroll logic was the same as writing a weather app. I smiled through the whole thing, nodded, even wrote down a few tips for him on a sticky note. Meanwhile, in the background, I was quietly logging into my cloud instance and revoking all access. Not maliciously, not even sneakily. It was mine, my account, my billing, my credentials. No one even knew it existed because it was my duct tape, keeping their collapsing Jenga tower of automation upright. See, the funny thing is, the drafts they mocked, that was the system. Jenkins triggers, cron jobs, custom scripts that handled file cleanup, user permission syncing, and the one thing they should have paid more attention to, the payroll runner. The beautiful, brittle, bastardized beast I built after the third-party solution almost yeeted an entire quarter's taxes into a black hole. But all they saw was a middle-aged woman with a calm voice and no social media presence. They thought process meant obstacle. They thought automation meant magic. They thought deleting drafts meant deleting power. I packed my little cardboard box that afternoon, monitor stand, stress ball, a succulent I hadn't watered since January, and walked out the door like a ghost. Not a single goodbye, not even a Slack emoji reaction. But back on my couch that night, I watched the logs in my private terminal window light up with warnings. Quiet ones, subtle ones, stuff like warn payroll runner, missing config token, retry in 48H, info sync, permissions list outdated. Error finance bot failed to deliver to webhook. It was like watching termites chew through floorboards in real time. Nobody noticed yet. The VP was probably busy rewriting my job title into something more masculine. The junior was still trying to find the login to Jenkins. I poured a glass of Merlot and toasted the silence, because the one thing they never asked before pushing me out was the only question that mattered. Who gave her root? They called it a clean transition, like I was a bowel movement they didn't want to smear on the company bathroom wall. Monday morning, I got a calendar invite titled Knowledge Transfer Ops to Future Team. The future team turned out to be one guy named Tyler, 24, wore Yeezys with khakis, and said, "Let's circle back," unironically. I'd barely taken off my jacket when he hit me with, "So, what even is cron, anyway?" I smiled, not the nice kind. The customer service rep getting screamed at by a man holding a receipt from 2008 kind. Then I pulled out a whiteboard and wrote, "Cron equals the reason your paycheck exists," and left it at that. The team stopped making eye contact by day 2. HR said you're welcome to work from home if that's more comfortable, which is corporate for please disappear before morale notices. Even the guy from finance, the one who used to DM me "you up" during outage nights, had downgraded to nods in the hallway. I became a walking antique, a museum piece still running the gift shop until the lights got cut. Tyler, bless him, tried. He really did. He asked me once if there was a Google Doc for the deploy script. I told him sure, it's embedded in the Jenkins pipeline metadata. Check the post-commit trigger in the infosync job. He blinked like I'd just spoken fluent raccoon. Right, yeah, I'll just, figure it out. On my last day I brought donuts. It felt poetic. Krispy Kreme, 6 glazed, 6 passive aggressive. No one ate them. The office manager took one and said, "Oh, you didn't have to," which is how I knew I'd be erased from Slack before the glaze even hardened. I sat through the exit interview like a prisoner on death row, pretending to give a damn about cafeteria feedback. "Is there anything you think your replacement should know?" The HR lady asked, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I said, "Yes. Don't hardcode Slack tokens into GitHub." She looked confused. "Is that a metaphor?" "Sure, Linda. Let's go with that." Then, just before logging off for good, I opened my private cloud instance, one tied to my personal billing card, the one I spun up 3 years ago when the company server hit its inode limit and the CTO suggested we just delete stuff and revoked every key. Not dramatically, no fireworks, just a soft, satisfying click. Access disabled, automated triggers suspended, webhooks silenced. To them, it was invisible. But to the system, it was like yanking a heartbeat monitor off a comatose patient. Logs wouldn't scream right away, they'd just cough a little, whisper, lose sync in quiet ways, and then one day when someone needed it most, nothing. I closed my laptop and left it on the desk. My box was already packed, succulent still half alive, coffee mug that said I void warranties, and of course my handwritten sticky note that read, "Don't touch the YAML if you don't speak it." The VP nodded at me on the way out. "Thanks for keeping things professional," he said. "Professional, right?" I gave him the same polite, laminated smile I'd been using since day one. The one that says you think you won. God bless your little teeth. Because for all his bark about scaling workflows, he never once asked what that deleted file actually did. Never once asked why the payroll job was named Process Doc Draft V3 Final Realithisone. Never once asked what the legacy bash script silently attached to our internal VPN tunnel was responsible for. And most importantly, never once asked why the CTO had stopped getting automated end-of-week infrastructure health reports since last Friday. But that's the thing about clean transitions, isn't it? They're only clean until the system notices who's missing. I walked out of that building like a ghost in orthopedic flats. No goodbye lunch, no HR escort. Just me, my sad little cardboard box, and the echo of my own relevance bouncing off fluorescent lights. The sun hit my face in the parking lot like it didn't know I'd just been erased. 6 years of duct taping digital chaos into submission, and I left quieter than the fridge hum in the break room. No speech, no handshake, not even a "will miss you" card with a misspelled name. Funny thing is, ghosts don't slam doors, they just linger. Back inside, systems were already whispering. Not screaming, not crashing, just whispering. Warn payroll queue, token sync lag 240s. Notice job runner, fallback schedule skipped, no primary info, Jenkins heartbeat skipped awaiting retry. Little red flags flickering like busted tail lights, but nobody reads logs anymore unless something's already on fire. And even then, they read them like horoscopes. Wishful, backwards, and only when it's too late. I knew the time bomb was live the moment I stepped off the elevator. Not a metaphor. Literal time trigger, buried deep in the orchestration scripts, one I'd written years ago when a payroll contractor tried to overwrite our run order with a Google Sheet. It wasn't malicious, just protective, like setting up a spare oxygen tank and hoping nobody notices they're underwater until the bubbles stop. That Friday morning, 3 days after my exit, the first silence hit. The bi-weekly contractor payment batch didn't post. No pings, no receipts, just a tiny Slack message from the finance intern. "Hey, is it normal for the vendor payouts to be this late?" Tyler replied with, "Lol Ike, I think it's handled by Jenkins or whatever. I'll check." He didn't check. Instead, he clicked around the GUI like it owed him money and rebooted something without reading the logs. Jenkins' job marked deprecated do not touch that only existed because it pointed to my personal cloud node. And it still didn't work. CTO saw the alerts piling up in PagerDuty, read the error codes, pipeline unreachable, token revoked, auth refused, credential mismatch, and gave a philosophical shrug. "We're refactoring all that anyway," he mumbled, sipping his coffee like it didn't taste like incoming lawsuits. He never understood how any of it worked. The automation scared him. It moved without his approval, ran too fast, too quietly. I once watched him stare at a shell script like it had insulted his mother. Now, with me gone, it was all legacy noise to him. Ghost code, haunted pipelines. They forgot I had named the payroll demon Greta after my aunt who used to slap hands away from dinner before grace. Greta didn't play favorites. She followed rules. And Greta had rules about tokens. The CTO asked Tyler to send him documentation. Tyler sent a link to a Notion page that said working on this RN eyes. Then he pasted a chat GPT snippet into Slack and said, "This might fix it?" It didn't. See, the system wasn't just held together with scripts. It was stitched from memory. From the time I stayed until midnight rebuilding the run order because finance changed their vendor last minute. From the kludge I wrote to handle daylight savings transitions in ACH transfers. From the dozen invisible things that had to happen in exactly the right sequence for $4 million to end up in the right bank accounts by 9 o'clock a.m. Friday. But I'd become an inconvenience. A process bottleneck. And now that bottleneck was gone, replaced with a gaping void no one could see yet. Meanwhile, Greta was ticking. Every missed sync widened the gap. Every bypass attempt triggered a deeper lock. Every error Tyler ignored was one less hand on the wheel. And I sat on my balcony with a beer and watched the sky darken, knowing exactly how far they'd fall before someone realized. Legacy noise doesn't stay quiet forever. Monday opened with a whimper, not a bang. No alarms, no flames. Just one polite email from accounts payable that said, "Hey team, any idea why the contractor batch didn't run Friday? A few folks didn't get paid." Cue Tyler, the boy wonder, now 3 days into wearing my shoes and already limping. He replied, "I'm not sure, we'll rerun the Jenkins job manually, like it was a vending machine he could smack until candy fell out." He clicked into the dashboard, hit execute, and got slapped with error 403, insufficient privileges. Pipeline trigger refused, token mismatch. He tried again using a canned admin credential from the onboarding wiki. Same result. Third time, system lockout for suspicious activity. It was like watching someone try to reboot a toaster with a hammer. By 10:15 a.m., Tyler was sweating through his polo and refreshing Slack like it owed him child support. I know this because a former coworker texted me a screenshot of him asking, "Hey, anyone know where the Greta script lives? Lol, what is that?" By lunchtime, finance escalated. 4 departments flagged missing disbursements. Payroll wasn't due until Friday, but the contractor flow was the canary, and that bird was face down in the mine shaft. The CTO, who had gone radio silent all weekend, finally showed up around 2 p.m., muttering about escalations and compliance visibility. He poked around the logs. The Jenkins jobs all looked intact on the surface, but none of them would fire. It was like the wiring was there, but the electricity was gone. He leaned over Tyler's shoulder, watched him click around a while, then said, "Just use the documentation." Tyler froze. I think it got deleted. I've just been using what's left in the Notion backup." CTO narrowed his eyes. Deleted by who? HR said she cleaned out her files before the transition. Everything was labeled draft, so the silence that followed could have cracked drywall. See, I always labeled things draft. Even the final build automation that handled secure API calls for ACH processing. Process doc draft v3 final realithison shy. Because when a VP once demanded a copy of all production files, I handed him a folder labeled in progress, and he never opened it. So yeah, drafts. And now the CTO was realizing he hadn't just lost a few bash snippets and an outdated runbook. It lost the exact sequence of automated steps that quietly, reliably, invisibly moved millions of dollars through the company's veins every 2 weeks. He ran a find command across the shared drives for payroll automation and came up empty. Then Greta, then root keys. Nada. Then he tried to grep logs for the cloud endpoints, only to hit a wall of connection refused, deprecated instance ID permission denied. Credential revoked, he rubbed his forehead. Why the hell was this tied to personal infrastructure? Nobody had an answer because nobody had asked. Slack started buzzing, not loud but steady. Quiet concern drifting through the engineering team like smoke under a door. Anyone know who set up the payout fallback system? Was that her? Thought that was moved to the new stack already? Nope. Still points to Greta Runner wait, who has access to that? By the end of the day, the CTO had called a short sync with the VP and finance leadership. Short turned into 90 minutes. I wasn't in the room, but I didn't need to be. A friend from QA messaged me, they're officially panicking. VP said he was told the system would self-document. Bro, self-document. That one made me laugh so hard I snorted wine. See, it wasn't that they couldn't rebuild the process. It's that they never bothered to learn it. They thought I was a filing cabinet with feelings, and all they had to do was slam the drawers closed on the way out. What they forgot was that automation has memory. It remembers who built it, and who walked away with the master key. Tyler ended the day sending out a company-wide message asking if anyone had a copy of the old infrastructure scripts or maybe like a walkthrough. Someone responded with a SpongeBob meme. Suspicion was no longer a shadow. It was a shape, taking form standing right behind them. And it was whispering, "You didn't just fire her. You unplugged the system she built, and now it's looking for her." By Wednesday morning, the smell of panic was thick enough to bottle. Finance had entered their pre-payroll ritual, downloading reports, syncing timesheets, kicking off the approval queues, except none of it was working. Not partially, not slowly, not at all. Buttons that used to light up green just spun like washing machines left on hope. The Jenkins interface showed jobs as queued, but nothing moved. Timestamps were stuck. Cron triggers, silent, notification bots, dead air. One payroll analyst posted in the #ops support channel, "Hey, did the disbursement runner change names or something?" and got hit with 4 auto-responses from Slackbot saying the alias no longer existed. Tyler, meanwhile, had hit his limit. He'd locked himself in a conference room, surrounded by printed screenshots, post-its, and a Chromebook he didn't know how to root. Someone said he'd Googled how to decode Bash. By 10 a.m., the VP called an emergency sync. Calendar title, Addressing Legacy System Failures Ops Accountability. Translation, Witch Hunt. I wasn't there, obviously, but a friend who dialed in with their mic muted sent me a play-by-play. Apparently, VP opened the meeting with his go-to smirk, the one that looked like it was stapled on by a leadership coach who said own the room. We're dealing with major fallout from poor documentation and bad process hygiene, he announced, voice crisp like a grocery store manager catching a teen stealing condoms. Frankly, this is the result of years of unchecked technical debt. CTO crossed his arms. The automation stack worked. For 6 years, did it? VP snapped, because it seems to have collapsed the moment she walked out the door. She built it, she maintained it, CTO said, but no one gave me visibility into the back end. I asked for documentation, you got drafts. VP hissed. She called it a black box, CTO said, now visibly irritated. Said it ran clean, but to leave it alone unless she was in the room. And it did run clean. So your defense, the VP said, voice icing over, is that our payroll system was a magical mystery box owned by a single engineer? Someone else piped up from HR. Isn't that what you signed off on during the restructure? Silence. My inbox pinged. Screenshot. The VP's face mid-blink, mid-flop sweat with the Slack chat beneath it lighting up in real time. Engineers were whispering to each other, but loud enough for the system to hear. Wait, who even owned the Jenkins pipeline? I thought Infra had it. Nah. She ran it through a self-hosted node. Remember that one cloud billing debate? Oh yeah, she paid for it herself for like a year after the budget freeze. Said it wasn't worth letting the whole thing collapse. Someone else dropped this gem, if it was her pipeline and her cloud and her scripts, who has root? The channel went dead for 2 minutes. Then a lone voice, not it. Back in the meeting, the CTO had gone from passive-aggressive to just aggressive. Fired her without asking what she ran. You didn't even ask her what the word Greta meant. You thought you could override her with a Jira board and a junior. The VP muttered something about not the time for finger pointing, which is what people say when the finger's pointed straight at them. Another screenshot hit my inbox, this one from a private thread where the CTO typed, if we don't recover by Thursday, the compliance flags go live. And then what? Someone asked. Then we owe $4 million in fines and missed deposits. Tyler finally chimed in from his digital exile with a nervous message. Would it help if I tried rebuilding the job flow from scratch? Like manually? 3 engineers left that thread within 30 seconds. Meanwhile, the finance team had started making noises about disaster scenarios. Someone floated the idea of issuing checks manually. The intern asked what a check was. I was on my couch, reading all this from a throwaway account on my old iPad, drinking gas station wine and eating cold pizza. The feeling creeping up my spine wasn't joy exactly. It was more exhale, the kind of slow, steady breath you take when the thing they mocked you for turns out to be the same thing they now pray still exists. I got a message from an old coworker, no words, just a gif of a raccoon slowly closing a laptop and sipping a martini. And that's when I knew vindication was no longer theoretical. It was measurable. It was Slack-based. It was the quiet, creeping realization that they hadn't just fired the woman who ran the system. They'd fired the woman who was the system. And now, the whole damn company was standing in the hallway, flipping light switches, and wondering why the house stayed dark. By Thursday morning, the fire was no longer theoretical. The CTO, who once claimed legacy logs are just tech debt crying for attention, was now elbow-deep in ash, trying to resurrect what he didn't understand. He was logged into the master node, what was left of it, digging through crondy directories like a raccoon with insomnia, looking for anything that could explain why the heartbeat jobs weren't talking to the bank servers. He found the logs, all right, encrypted. He clicked into /var/log/payroll runner, and instead of timestamps and past /fail flags, he got a lovely message. Access requires identity confirmation biometric auth enabled token lockout. I'd set that up 3 years ago when a temp contractor tried to optimize our deployment cycle by merging live code during a coffee break. It was basic ops hygiene, but now it felt biblical. CTO tried an override with his admin token. Denied. Tried again with the legacy root token we kept in an encrypted vault behind 7 layers of policy hell. Still denied. He then tried something desperate. He opened the emergency recovery protocol doc, found the section titled in case of total pipeline failure, and right there in big bold letters it said, root confirmation required. Encrypted biometric hash, user, Greta S. my name, hard-coded. Back when they still used it in Slack instead of referring to me as ops. He blinked again. Who the hell gave her biometric root? No one in the room answered. Mostly because nobody left in the room even knew that was a thing. The VP just muttered, that's not standard, like he was talking to a ghost. Meanwhile, in the corner of the war room, Tyler was falling apart. He'd been pulled into a one-on-one with the VP the night before. According to whispers, started off passive, let's talk about how we landed here, and escalated into full-blown finger-pointing by slide 3. The VP accused him of not doing due diligence, said he should have built redundancy, and suggested maybe he wasn't senior enough for this level of oversight. Tyler tried explaining, said he'd asked for the old scripts, said he was working 18-hour days, said no one told him there was a separate cloud instance. No one told him anything. By the end of it, he left the office looking like a wet paper napkin in human form. Back at home, I saw it. A little notification pinged on my LinkedIn. David C., Chief Technology Officer at Redacted, sent you a message. I didn't even open it. Just left it there, floating in digital purgatory, like an unopened letter from an ex who wants closure, because I already had closure. It was wrapped in 2FA and sealed with my face. Slack channels were chaos by noon. Someone from compliance posted, "Anyone know who last touched the payroll vault credentials?" And someone replied with a single word, Greta. Then came the dev threads. "We can't even read the error logs without her keys. The service tokens are linked to a hash nobody recognizes. Was she running a sidecar node? These IPs aren't ours. Who architected this?" Another reply, "She did." And then, I favorite, someone uploaded a diagram from an old onboarding deck. At the center was a little stick figure labeled Ops. No name, no color, just me. The only person in that whole damn building who knew what every arrow in that diagram actually meant, and now those arrows pointed to nothing. Blank boxes, broken handshakes, null routes. I read the messages in silence, sipping tea like it was champagne. Not out of pettiness, not even revenge. It wasn't about proving I was irreplaceable. It was about watching them finally confront the system they pretended to understand, stripped of the mask they stapled on it, face to face with their own assumptions. They thought automation was magic. They thought root access was a checkbox. They thought documentation would save them after cutting the only person who ever wrote any of it. But the system doesn't care what you thought it was. It runs on truth, on logic, on the pure, cold calculus of who actually built it. And now, it was suffocating on their arrogance, one missed heartbeat at a time. At 3:12 a.m., while the company servers sat in the dark like sulking children, the CTO was in full meltdown mode. Slack logs would later show a burst of panicked messages from his account that read less like troubleshooting and more like a digital exorcism. Override root W/backup token failed. Running manual job through SSH shell timed out. Who has access to Greta's biometric hash? Anyone? Is there a goddamn backdoor? He even tried something desperate, resurrecting a 6-year-old Ansible playbook labeled Legacy Redeploy that hadn't been touched since our last database outage in the Trump administration. He hit run, watched it hang on step 4 of 83, then crash with error. Endpoint unreachable token revoked. Every fail lit up the ops dashboard like a Christmas tree wired by a drunk electrician. Somewhere between the second and third override attempt, the CTO must have realized it wasn't just a bug. It wasn't a missing semicolon, it was structural. The automation was locked, the keys were gone. The fallback routines had fallback routines, and they all pointed back to a woman sipping Malbec on her patio in silence. Me. My phone buzzed at 3:24 a.m. Not a call, not an email. Just a screenshot from an old teammate who'd jumped ship 3 months before. No message, no greeting. Just a single JIRA ticket with a glowing red flag. Payroll blocked escalation level. RED assignee, unassigned status, open tags, urgent, breach risk, NON compliant. I stared at it like a war photographer watching the first mortar land. Then I opened my bottle of wine. No glass, just straight from the neck. Like I used to when I was still debugging Jenkins jobs at midnight in that freezing server closet. Because this wasn't chaos. It was climax. Back at HQ, finance was imploding. They'd been told everything was under control. Now their spreadsheets weren't syncing, the ACH preview run was returning zeros, and the CFO had begun CCing the CEO on every email with risk in the subject line. Slack had gone full code orange. Can someone from Infra confirm the automation's current state? Compliance says we're 12 hours from triggering a federal penalty. We need to send out a communication to employees by 9 a.m. What do we say? At 4:01 a.m., someone from the compliance team dropped the bomb. Just to confirm, we have no authorized method for triggering payroll by tomorrow morning. A minute passed. 2. Then a lonely message from the CTO, correct. Root access required. Current methods? Insufficient. No more exclamation points. No hashtags. Just a man quietly realizing the entire bloodstream of his company had been funneled through a single artery, and that artery had walked out the door with a potted plant and a donut box. And the VP? He was still slinging delusion like it came with stock options. Some intern posted his update in the Slack chat like it was a quote from a lunatic cult leader. We can just rebuild it overnight. How hard can it be? That one actually made me laugh. I took another pull from the bottle and whispered to no one, hard enough, Chad. Because let's be honest, they didn't even know which language it was built in. Tyler thought cron was a typo. The CTO thought Jenkins was just a fancy GUI. And the VP still believed automation was plug and play, like Payroll was a damn playlist you could export from Spotify. They didn't want process. They wanted magic. And when the magician left, they screamed at the hat, wondering why the rabbit didn't come out. I watched the fire spread from my couch. Didn't flinch. Didn't reply, because this wasn't revenge. This was physics. And when you rip out the foundation and replace it with buzzwords, don't act surprised when the roof falls through your calendar invite. At exactly 9 o'clock a.m. on Friday, the company's main payroll runner, Greta Master Pipeline SH, initiated like clockwork, and for exactly 3 seconds, everything looked normal. The Jenkins dashboard showed the job in queue. The pre-run validator pinged green. A few optimistic souls in finance even leaned back in their chairs, sipping burnt coffee and whispering things like maybe it's fixed itself. Then the screen hiccuped, spun, hung, and in bold white text over a sea of black terminal despair the final line appeared: fatal error, root key not found, process terminated, no retries, no backup job, no link to escalate. Just a full system hard stop, like payroll itself had taken a deep breath and flatlined. I wasn't there to hear the silence, but I've been told you could feel it in your bones. The CTO stormed into the building 15 minutes later, still in gym shorts and a hoodie, laptop under one arm like a defibrillator he planned to slap across the server rack. He didn't even look at the receptionist. He went straight to the war room, formerly known as Conference Room B, and plugged into the core node like a man trying to restart a heart with kitchen utensils. He tried everything. SSH override, denied. Legacy user impersonation, failed. Offline pipeline rebuild, return permission mismatch. Emergency token protocol, token deprecated origin user required. The VP showed up 10 minutes later, all cologne and panic. His voice echoed down the hall before he even entered. Is it fixed? Tell me it's fixed. He walked in, expecting to bark orders. But the CTO didn't even look up, just tilted the laptop slightly toward him so he could see the terminal. Fatal error, root key not found. Process terminated. Escalation level, RED compliance risk. Active payroll disbursement, 0.00/4,183,226.1 for USD Slack exploded. The hash infra channel was a mess of emoji reactions, error codes, and theories written in a panic haze. Can we spoof the key? Anyone try restoring from snapshot? What the hell is biometric hash mode? We're gonna get sued. Then one last line before the channel fell eerily silent. Why did we ever let her leave? And then, nothing. Engineers stopped posting. Finance stopped refreshing. The interns stopped asking. It was like someone had thrown a sheet over the whole system and said, let's all sit quietly and wait for the consequences. VP, still pacing, started yelling. This is sabotage. This is criminal. Someone's getting sued. Do you hear me? We are going to fix this. He spun on the CTO. Rebuild it. Start fresh. Just move the money manually. The CTO, pale and sweating, said nothing. Instead, he opened the system audit log, scrolled, clicked the last successful root access event, dated 3 weeks ago. Timestamp 9:12 a.m. User, Greta as he stared at it. Then at the VP, then back at the screen. Tell me we can still message her, the VP said. Tell me someone can. The CTO just tilted the screen again and said flatly. She revoked all channels. No email, no Slack. Personal instance is gone. Biometric root key expired with her exit date. The VP's mouth opened to shout again. But then he saw it. At the bottom of the audit trail, system status, locked recovery method, unavailable error origin, user deleted. He didn't say another word, not for a full 2 minutes. Then slowly he sat down in the nearest chair like his spine had given up. His voice, when it finally returned, was barely above a whisper. It's gone? The CTO didn't answer. He didn't have to. The pipeline was dead. The money, frozen. The system, locked behind credentials no one could forge, force, or fake. And me? I was sitting cross-legged on my living room rug, watching the sun hit my windowsill succulent, wondering if I should buy a second one. Maybe name it Jenkins, for the irony. I took a bite of my bagel, laughed once, and refreshed LinkedIn. Because chaos was their new normal now, and I was already somewhere they'd never find me. They called the emergency all hands at 10:17 a.m. No agenda, no tone, just a calendar block titled mandatory. Every department was summoned: finance, engineering, HR, even the interns who usually spent mornings arguing over which kombucha was more ethical. The Zoom call filled up like a lifeboat taking on water. Cameras flicked on, microphones muted, faces pale, confused, jittery. Then the CTO appeared. No background blur, no blazer, just a man who looked like he'd aged 10 years since Monday, standing at the front of conference room with a laptop in one hand and defeat in the other. He cleared his throat once, and when he spoke, his voice didn't shake. It didn't plead, it just was. It's gone, he said. No slides, no jargon, just 2 words that made every person in that room sit a little straighter and a whole lot colder. Then he paused. Scanned the room like maybe someone had a miracle tucked into their tote bag. Finally, he asked the question that would echo down that company's hallways for years. Who gave her root? And just like that, the room cracked, not loudly, not dramatically, but in that soft, brittle way things fall when they were hollow to begin with. Murmurs started, quiet, guilty, confused. She had root? I thought infra managed that. Wasn't it approved in Q3 last year? Wait, you mean Greta? Someone tried to ask, can we reach out, but trailed off when the CTO shook his head. No, they couldn't, because while they were busy cutting costs and titles, shuffling org charts and renaming job descriptions, they'd forgotten the one truth you never ignore in systems. You don't remove the architect and keep the cathedral. Back at home, I turned off my phone. I didn't check Slack, didn't open the voicemails. just stared at the screen of my old laptop, cursor blinking over a contract titled Senior Infrastructure Consultant Immediate Start. Company, their direct competitor terms, remote, double pay, full autonomy, status pending signature. I clicked accept, and that was that. I closed the lid, logged out of LinkedIn, watched the afternoon sun spill through the blinds like it was trying to say told you so. No rage, no gloating. Just that slow, clean exhale of a story ending exactly where it was meant to. Because revenge doesn't have to roar. It doesn't need billboards or breakdowns. Sometimes the deepest cut is the one you leave behind in silence. They scoffed at my drafts, told me to erase what I'd built. And I did, just not the way they expected. Because in the end, I hadn't written documentation. I'd written a system, and then I wrote its ending. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.